Hello again. So, in continuation or to introduce what's been um, introduced previously or in the past lectures, about problems and solutions that were offered last lecture. You know, today we start with introducing these problems separately. We will introduce the problem and solution according to Ghazala's textbook. So we start with comments on translation problems. So in this, if you can read the slide between the lines, Mr. or Professor Ghazala is trying to tell you why he adopted this method. He finds it as practical, where he can offer the problem and then find or suggest the solution, especially at the starter level of translators or trainees of translation. So he said, according to him, it's been simplified to be convenient with the students' level of study as well as the general reader demands for clarity and simplicity. He talks about the problems they will be offered for the upcoming text or chapters, and complicated problems. We mentioned the kinds of problems like stylistic, the grammatical, the phonological, the cultural problems. Last lecture, you can go over again in the last slide because it's connected. Finally, he mentioned each example used to illustrate any of these problems has other problem of different kinds, but they're not discussed together on the same occasion. Okay, let's go to last paragraph. In other words, any source language, SL stands for source language, the language that we translate from or we're trying to render from into the target language, the TL. Text can have all types of problems at the same time. Again, we mention these kinds: grammatical, lexical, stylistic, and phonological. In practice, they can't be separated. But in theory, they can for the convenience of discussion and comprehension. So that's mainly the comments on translation problem Ghazala is concerned with. Okay, now let's turn to check the solutions to translation problems. According to Mr. Ghazala, any translation problem demands a solution. Of course, to any problem there is a solution. Without a solution or solutions, there is no great use pinpointing a translation problem. Without solution to translation problems, we stop translating together. This is why all the problems located in this work are accompanied at the same time by their possible solution. That's why he always offers the problem and then finds a solution to such problems. So to solve these problems of translation, and please try to benefit from his suggestions in order to avoid it in your work in the future, because some of you may go into the field of translation and you may use this source as a reference from time to time. You can visit it, you get the best out of it. In order to be acceptable, any suggested solution is made clear, reasonable, feasible, reliable, applicable, contextual, and in the right direction. Otherwise, it will not be acceptable. This may result in a wrong, baseless translation. The solutions proposed to translation problems are therefore based on the following criteria. Check page 25 so you can have much details in the solutions to translation problems. However, I'll mention some of them in my presentation. You know, the type of text. Sometimes you're reading a text that's so general, some of it very technical or religious. You might read a religious text, a political text. As a translator, you're introduced to different types of texts. The minor linguistic, number 2 or second linguistic context, the preceding and the following word, phrase, clause, etc. And look at this type as well, the possibility of saying something in the target language, the TL, or not. For instance, fat. If you say fat salary, we can say راتب. For instance, we can translate it into the target language as, or the source language, you know, راتب ضخم, fat salary, but not راتب سمين. ما نقولوش عليها راتب سمين, يعني نقول راتب ضخم. Okay, so the possibility or not of using an ideal target language grammatical structure, you know, one of the criteria, the social acceptability of an expression. For instance, good morning, we translate into صباح الخير, whereas صباح جيد is not accepted socially. ما نقولوا صباح جيد. If we do a literal translation, you may translate it into good, جيد, and morning is صباح. No, it's not acceptable at all. You know, again, there are many types, you know, suggesting a solution to, you know, these are the problems Ghazala will talk about in his textbook. You please visit your text on page like 25 and read them out. You know, a solution can be based on one or more of these criteria. On the other hand, one problem can have more than one solution. Yeah, you can have different solution to one problem, as much as one solution can be applied to solve more than one problem. In practice, in a course of the forthcoming chapters, solutions are considered alongside with problems, though they are discussed separately for the convenience of reading and pursuit of discussion. So that we will adopt what's so called a translation as problems and solution, and as he sorted out, he called it a practical approach. He will adopt a practical approach in his textbook, because, you know, this work on translation adopts the practical approach of viewing it in terms of problems and difficulties found at translating and the solutions suggested to them. First, the example is cited alongside its literal translation. That's how he will map his data in order to show how students can comprehend it into Arabic. Then the translation problem is located and discussed in detail. Then a possible solution is suggested to this problem, followed by the criteria on what it's based. Although translation problems and solutions are sometimes unpredictable, and the same problem can have different solutions in different texts and contexts, different types of readership, you know, they can be defined and numbered in general but clear terms. You know, this practical or problem solving approach to translation is not based on any theoretical presuppositions. It deals with the practical part, is subject to translation wholly and completely. So it's not based on a theories or on a theoretical framework, يعني بغطاء نظري، يعني مجرد وجدها هو أكتر فيها ريحية للطلاب واللي هم في بداية مهنيتهم، مهنية الترجمة. On the other hand, this approach is meant to be an alternative to the traditional one, which adopts a ready-made theory and then applies it to the translation of a text. Yeah. So before we move on talking about the grammatical problems, we start talking about the grammatical problems. Let me give you an example of how Ghazala sets his own problems and solutions, the one I've been talking about in this slide. Like, look at this example with me. Take a pen. You guys take a pen and write down the example and like, for instance, let's say translation of verb be. What are the verbs of be? Yes, you. Okay, what are they? Just remind me again. Yes, come on. You know? Okay, verb to be is okay, good. That's great. Thank you. Is, are, was, were, be, been. These are all verbs to be. Problem, literal translation of am is are. You see, look at the literal translation that students always face or do commit problems with these. When these verbs are the main and only verbs in the sentence, they're translated by many students literally into yakun, which is in fact a poor translation. Yes, we don't translate into يكون a poor يعني ضعيفة ركيكة فيها ركاكة. مثلا I am a student. أنا أكون طالبا. She is kind. هي تكون طيبة. You are a mother. أنت تكون أما. No, that's not the way it should be translated. If you want to make your translation really strong and great solution. So he offered, that's the way he offered that's the practical approach he's been talking about. Solution I am is are can be omitted altogether here, thus changing the English verbal sentence into Arabic nominal ones. That's to say, into a topic and a comment. مبتدا وخبر يعني مبتدا وخبر ما هي nominal ones. For instance, let's say I am a student. ترجمتها تكون أنا طالب. حاولوا يكونوا أو أكونوا. So you see a problem and solution. He offered a problem and في مشكلة عند الطلاب تواجه الطلاب أو مبتدئي الترجمة وبعدين يقول لكم المشكلة شنو هي ويعطيكم الحل الجواب بحيث أن أنتم تتجنبوا الأشياء هذه. بهي شوفوا المثال الثاني. She's kind. Okay, would you please translate it? Go ahead. Yes. Okay, good. هي طيبة. نعم. So you see how you avoided translating the linking verb is يكون يتكون. Okay, you are a mother. أنت أو أنت أم. So مش أنت تكون أما. Yes. Therefore, verb to be in the present simple is used here to connect as much as equate between two words. Okay, it's exactly like saying X equals Z. Thus, I equals student. أنا بهي طالب. She equals kind. هي طيبة. And you equals mother. أنت أو أنتِ That's why it's called an equative verb. They'll call it an equative verb. The same applies to the translation of am is are were when used an auxiliary verbs to form the present progressive tense and the present passive voice, a good number of students translate them literally. For instance, I'm leaving now. So here is an auxiliary, is not a linking verb. So you know how to differentiate between the linking verb and auxiliary? Yes, because in the present progressive here is used as an auxiliary كمساعد لفعل الأساسي اللي هو شنو هو الفعل الأساسي هنا؟ leaving. Yes, leaving. I'm leaving now. أنا أكون أغادر. لو قلت أنا أكون أغادر هنا في ركاكة في الجملة في الجملة في اللغة العربية. No, it's not acceptable. لكن مغادرا الآن. شفت مغادرا الآن. Yes, it's good. Sounds good. Okay, so these are some of the problems he will offer for the coming slides or the coming lectures. That's the way he would adopt. That's the practical approach to translation problems and solution that he named according to his book. Thank you. And let's move into second slide. Okay, now we turn to introducing grammar. We start with introducing grammatical problems, or the problems we've mentioned. We mentioned lecture, so we start to produce them separately. Grammatical problems. The problems are too many, are so many. Okay, and I can't mention them all on the slide. I will try to explain them. I tried to sum up some of these problems, but again, I want you to go over them in details in your textbook page. They start from page like 29. Okay, the different types of grammatical problems. I'll try to very quickly go over them. Some of the types. I don't know how much we can cover, but it's beneficial for you to like study them, to read them, and they're not that hard. They're easy. The way it's written is really easy, helpful. You know, so according to grammatical problems, English and Arabic belong to two different and distant language families من عائلات مختلفة تماما. English is West Germanic and Arabic is Semitic language family من عائلة سامية. Consequently, their grammars are sharply different. So that's why many students and beginners of translation or trainees commit mistakes in grammar. Several grammatical features of English create variable problems of translation into Arabic experience shows that one of the primary mistakes committed by the students of translation is their presupposition that English grammar and Arabic grammar can translate each other in a straightforward way. Like as I said in the last slide, I'm a student. أنا أكون طالب. يعتقد الطلاب اللي يخطوا في such translation يعني زي هذه الترجمات أن ينقل قواعد اللغة الإنجليزية إلى العربية في الترجمة يعني أنا أكون طالب وهي في الواقع أنا طالب equals. Okay, so to confirm that the problems of translating the most prominent points of English grammar into Arabic are discussed now. All the problems are followed by one or more suggested solutions. So as I said, that's the way he offered you. When I say he, that means Hassana, Professor Ghazala. Okay, so he offered the problem, the type of a problem. Like if you can look at the slide, I know it's blurry, you know, So if you can look at the slide, you see it's or the one I talked about last slide, literal translation of am is on. He mentioned a problem. He tries to offer you a sentence in its counterpart translation to target and source language, and then he will comment on a problem and try to fix this problem for you. Okay, he gives a suggestion to how to translate or it should be translated. So we start with, he started introducing these grammatical problems with translation of verb to be, again, and the present progressive, how we translate the present progressive, you know, and some he would mention some of the problems like for instance, I'm leaving now. أنا أغادر الآن. أنا مغادر الآن. You know, the expressions, yeah, and the present passive voice. Okay, so these are some of the problems. Look at the slide. This the same literal translation of was, were into can. So unlike am is are, the past simple of be, was, and were are translated literally into can, both as main as well as auxiliary verbs كأفعال مساعدة وكأساسية. was and were. Okay, he was eating. هنا جت مساعد للفعل eating الأساسي. he was a student. كان طالب. هنا أتت كلينكن verb، رابط كفعل أساسي main verb، رابط بين الصفة والموصوف اللي هو he is a subject and was is Lincoln verb or main verb to the complement or a student, you know, object. So yes, both as main as well as auxiliary verbs. As main verbs, like if you look at the example, he mentioned the child was ill. The translation is كان الطفل مريضا. The bird was beautiful. كان الطائر جميلا. The players were one team. كان اللاعبون فريقا واحدا. B as auxiliaries, the past progressive. Her mother was preparing lunch. كانت والدتها تعد الطعام والغذاء. My brother was writing a letter. كان أخي يكتب رسالة. Our guests were praying. كان ضيوفنا يصلون. Yet literal translation is unfavorable when these verbs يعني مش محبذة عندما تأتي when these verbs are used as auxiliaries to form the past passive voice as illustrated in the following example. So here where the problems come up, you know, when we translate, when we conform them or when we structure these sort of verbs into the passivization. To see the passive, the past passive voice, the food was eaten. كان الطعام مأكولا. No. كان أكل الطعام. I was deceived. مخدوعا. أنا كنت خدعت. The boys were dismissed. To read the Arabic translation yourself. Solution was and were. So you see how he gives a problem, gives the structure, and then tries to offer you a solution. And that's what happened with the upcoming types of problems he will see. So please go over the pages that go under the grammatical problems. So this chapter talks only about grammatical problems, different types of grammars, the problems in a grammar. Solution was and where can be neglected in Arabic as follows. يعني تجنبها في ترجمة اللغة العربية لما يكون في passivization في المبني المجهول. The food was eaten. أكل الطعام. I was deceived. أنا اختيارية لما نحطها between brackets or squares. خدعت. شفتوا؟ خدعت. So the boys were dismissed. طرد الأولاد. Therefore was and were are retained in A and B but dropped in C only. Again we move into, so you see these are the problems. That's how he would adopt the problem and gives a solution and explanation. It tries to show you, guide you how to avoid such problems. If we're moving into the third problem is negligence or literal translation of bin. The past participle be, bin is wrongly ignored. دي ما يتجاهلوا فيه بالخطأ. Or translated literally into كائن in Arabic. Where have you been? أين كنت كائنا? She has been late. كانت متأخرة. They had been released. Solution been كائن is changed to past simple. Or disregarded يتجنبوا في أوقات. شوف you see the solution. Where have you been? Where were you? لما يقول لك where have you been? أين كنت? She has been late. She was late. كانت متأخرة. They had been released. They were released. Thus the dictionary meaning of been as كائن in Arabic is strictly not advisable to use. ما يقولوش كائن. No. Contrast the full form of verb be that is always literal translate and thus poses no problems. He will be with us. سوف يكون. You can be a good citizen. تستطيع أن تكون مواطنا صالحا. We must be in the hospital now. ينبغي أن نكون في المشفى الآن. Again, some of the problems, translation of verb do. So 1.2, translation of verb do. They have many problem when translating the verb do. Problem 1 and solution do in the negative. Verb do is used in English to form the negative of all verbs except be. Have and the modal verbs do and does are used with the present simple, whereas did is used with the past. All these forms are meaningless in Arabic. However, they have the function of indicating the tense of the verb, present or past. That's their function. What's translated into Arabic is the negative particle, not لا only. He doesn't like coffee. إنه اختيارية لا يحب القهوة. Some people don't smile. بعض الناس لا يبتسمون. Problem 2 and solution did in the negative. The same can be said with translation didn't. Word not is into lam with the present and occasionally into ma with the past. Example, she didn't eat much. لم تأكل أو ما أكلت كثيرا. We didn't find the money. لم نجد النقود. ما وجدنا. The horse did not fall down. لم يسقط أو ما سقط الحصان. Problem 3 and solution do in question. Again, more problems. Problem and solution. The misunderstanding of do as a substitute verb. Do you admit that? Yes, I do. هل تقر بذلك؟ نعم أفعل. I do. Yes, I do. نعم. Did she swear? Yes, she did. هل أقسمت؟ نعم فعلت. You see how you translate it? This is acceptable. Not only this, it's easier and more favorable to students, yet the better solution is to translate into the main verb of the first sentence. الأفضل أن ترجموها زي الفعل الأول. يعني do you admit that? Yes, I do. هل تقر بذلك؟ نعم أقر بذلك. أفضل من أن مثلا تقولوا نعم أفعل. أعد صياغة الفعل الأول. Did she swear? Yes, she did. هل أقسمت؟ نعم أقسمت. So you see, more problems do as a main verb. This solution is acceptable. Main verb, do as a main verb. Do is meaningful in translation. Usually it's translated into Arabic as يفعل. However, it can sometimes be translated into يفعل يعمل يؤدي عملا يقوم بعمل. I'll do my best. سأفعل ما بوسعي. Mary does her job well. تقوم ماري بعملها على خير ما يرام. تؤدي ماري عملها بشكل حسن. We did it yesterday. عملناها أو فعلناها أمس. In the following example, do can be translated either as يعمل ويؤدي or exceptionally as write. Some students do the work quickly. يكتب أو يعمل أيهما تكون ترجمة. أوكي. بعض الطلبة واجباتهم بسرعة. So modal problems do as an emphatic device. Sometimes we use it as an emphatic للتأكيد يعني كآلة للتأكيد. This verb can be exceptionally used as emphatic. Therefore, it's translated that Muslims do recite the Holy Quran every day. يتلو أو يقرأ المسلمون القرآن كل يوم بالتأكيد. Please check your page 34, 35. Translation of verb have. The translation of verb have many problems and solutions and different interpretations. So students commit such mistakes. Go over it and see how such problems have been tackled according to Ghazala's explanation. I highly recommend you to check on this, the translation of modal auxiliaries, verbs and modals. There are 10 main auxiliary verbs or modals in English: can, could, may, might, will, would, shall, should, must, ought to. They create several proper translation for two major reasons. Yeah. So again, please see them. Problem: will, shall are not verbs in Arabic. سوف, تسويف. This translation is modal. Okay. So you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. You see how problems are offered in the text. Please check it. Make use of it. Try to look into the translation yourself. Try to look into the mistakes students commit. Try to use your own translation and compare it to the translation found in this text. Make use of a practical approach the Professor Ghazala adopted to explain such problems. Because, as I said in the beginning of this presentation, the problems are so many or too many to cover. So yeah. Okay, these are modal auxiliaries. Problems of modal auxiliaries. More problems coming up. Translation of questions. How you translate questions. Like, let's look at the problem, the possibility of imitating the question form. The students might think of translating the types of English questions into equivalent types in Arabic. And the possible, okay, one word for all questions. Like, are you playing tense? هل تلعب التنس? Have you played tense? هل لعبت التنس? Two more or less frequent questions. ألعبت أو أتلعب. Okay. Teaching online takes much of effort. It's not an easy task. It requires much of concentration. And as an instructor, I'm trying to deliver to make it authentic to my students. It's a bit time consuming and hard. Translation of negation. She can't pay money, for instance. لا تستطيع أن تدفع النقود. She will not pay money. سوف لن تدفع نقودا. Not is strong after will and shall and is therefore always translated in the strong len only for future reference in Arabic. Differences between don't, doesn't, and didn't. These are a problem of negation. Please check these problems. Never as one word, abadan in Arabic. Dictionaries give never one meaning in Arabic, which is abadan. We never give up. نستسلم أبدا. قط. I never saw him before. رأيته أبدا. قط من قبل. No. So that's a problem. Never is either. لن نقط أبدا. لا نقط أبدا. لم أبدا. يعني ما تترجمهاش we never give up تقولوا نستسلم أبدا. No. The structure of never should be translated as لم وبعدين الجملة وأبدا. شوفوا هذا المثال. We never give up. لا نستسلم أبدا. I never saw him before. لم أره من قبل أبدا. You find it on page 44. Please check it. Go over it again and again. Try to study it hard. Such translation or interpretation will come into your exam. I might ask you to translate some of the sentences. Yeah. أنا لا أحب الكذب أو الغش. I like neither lying or cheating. شفتوا? You see how the confusion of neither, no with either or. More problems offered under grammatical problem. Translation of sentence types, nominal versus verbal sentences. الجمل الاسمية والفعلية في اللغة العربية. المبتدأ والمسند إليه والخبر يعني غالبا ما يخطأ الطلاب في ترجمتها لأن التراكيب تختلف نسبيا بين اللغات. Okay, conditional. Wow, the problems are so many to mention. Please, yes, try to translation of word order. Word order is a problem with nominal word order, topic and command, subject and predicate, مبتدا والخبر, verbal word order, the reservation of the English word order. The diplomat left Damascus for London. شفتوا هذه الدبلوماسي غادر دمشق إلى لندن. The sky became cloudy. السماء تلبدت بالغيوم. The diplomat, in normal cases, the English word order is replaced by the more frequent and normal Arabic word order of verb, subject, object. That's the structure of Arabic structure or sentence structure. The examples can therefore be translated as follows. The diplomat left Damascus for London. غادر الدبلوماسي دمشق إلى London. The sky was cloudy. تلبدت السماء بالغيوم. السماء تلبدت بالغيوم. بالمقابل الترجمة عند بعض الطلاب ومبتدئي الترجمة يأتون بالفاعل على صيغة اللغة الإنجليزية بينما هي تعطي أكثر جمالا وأكثر دقة لو نبدأها بالفعل. تلبدت السماء بالغيوم. The pupils enjoyed their holiday. استمتع التلاميذ بعطلتهم. تختلف عن التلاميذ استمتعوا بإجازتهم أو بعطلتهم وله. Where the verb is first followed by the subject and then the object, I, or complement. Similarity of word of English and more problems have been devised here. Okay, good. Yeah. Do you have any question? Please go over the materials. Check these pages. Study them hard. Study the problems I've been mentioning. Look into the practical use, the solutions Mr. Ghazala offered, and please try to comment them. I will ask you next lectures. I'll check your intelligence. I'll check your memory, if you read it, or what you've done with it. Yeah, check until page 58. We might be, so up to here, I think it's enough to introduce the problems and the grammatical problems. Okay, so we stop at translation of adjectives. Check until page 58. You're required to study all these pages. Okay, thank you. Talk to you next lecture.